much Gary. Every time Gary plays, I think about how very fortunate we are that he shares his gifts with us. Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing our opening hymn, number 38, Morning Has Broken. Our opening words this morning are from the United Nations Environmental Sabbath service. We join with the earth and with each other to bring new life to the land, to restore the water, to refresh the air. We join with the earth and with each other to celebrate the seas, to rejoice in the sunlight, to sing the song of the stars. We join with the earth and with each other to recreate the human community, to promote justice and peace, to remember our children. We join with the earth and with each other. We join together as many and diverse expressions of one loving mystery for the healing of the earth and the renewal of all life. Good morning. My name is Elizabeth DeCoux, and it's my privilege to serve as your worship leader this morning. Whatever path has brought you to this place, whether it's your first time here or you've been here for many years, we're very glad to see you. May I offer you a warm welcome to Buckman Bridge Unitarian Universalist Church, located on the ancestral lands of the Timucuan people. If you are new to this church or to our faith, you will find that we ask you to know us not by our creeds, but by our deeds. I especially want to welcome any first-time or returning guests who are here today. Be sure to stop by our welcome table back at the entryway and pick up some information about our church and our denomination. If you haven't already done so, you're invited to sign in as a guest and get a name tag so that we can get to know you by name. For those of you interested in finding out more about our congregation and our denomination, we offer regular classes that we call Learn About Us classes. If you want to know more about those classes, or if you want to learn about the path to membership, our membership chair, Julie Smithers, will be happy to talk to you. If you have questions, here's what to do. You may have noticed that most everybody has on a name tag. Look for someone whose name tag has a yellow sticker with the words, "New, ask me." That person will be glad to answer any questions you have. If you're ready to jump in and help, we're always looking for volunteers. We'd love to have people help with refreshments in the kitchen, and that's a great way to meet people. If you're interested, there are volunteer sign-up sheets on the back table. I have a request that everyone please silence their electronic devices. We cordially invite our guests, along with members of the congregation, to gather in the back after the service for snacks, fair trade coffee, and conversation. I hope to see you there. I invite Cindy Damon to come forward and light our chalice this morning. As we light our chalice on this Lesbian Visibility Day, in this month when our theme is resistance, please hear these words of Adrienne Rich. When those who have the power to name and to socially construct reality choose not to see you or hear you, when someone with the authority of a teacher, say, describes the world and you are not in it, there is a moment of psychic disequilibrium, as if you looked in the mirror and saw nothing. It takes some strength of soul, and not just individual strength, but collective understanding, to resist this void, this non-being into which you are thrust. To stand up, demanding to be seen and heard. We are delighted to have a very gifted musician, Jarrett Carter, presenting our special music today. Jarrett is a professional musician, composer, and teacher based in Jacksonville. He began playing guitar when he was 10 years old and soon began to study classical guitar with Don Casper at Douglas Anderson School of the Arts. He then went on to study jazz guitar with Bobby Ferrazza at the Oberlin Conservatory of Music, where he earned his bachelor's degree in jazz performance. He currently plays with a multitude of musicians, covering genres ranging from jazz and classical to pop, rock, and country, primarily in Jacksonville and greater Northeast Florida. Welcome, Jarrett.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having me. I don't often get to play solo guitar. This is always good for me, which is a blessing and a curse, because if I'm not with Bruce, I have no one to rely on. So, but the blessing is that I can go any direction I want and not have to rely on anybody to go with me. You know. So I'm going to play a piece. I'm going to take a chance. This is a piece written by a really close friend of mine named Benjamin Shorstein. Um, he's a local guy, probably never heard of him. He's a accountant by day and mad scientist composer by night. We've been friends since high school. And this is actually a piece he probably wrote when he was 16 or 17. I'm 33 now. So it's been a long time. But it's aged well, I think, at least for me. It means a lot to me. This is probably the first big recording project we did together. He composed, well, let me backtrack. So there is a famous orchestral suite called Planets by DeCoux. And, you know, we were weird kids. We were in high school listening to this stuff. And Ben, at that age, was like, I want to, we listened to a lot of jazz too, so he was like, I want to arrange this classical orchestral suite to be in a jazz ensemble. And he took all of the movements, which is named after all the planets in our solar system, but he wrote one original, because DeCoux never wrote a piece for Earth. This is Earth, and I've taken a chance with it because I've only heard it as an ensemble piece, so I'm going to try it as a solo guitar piece, which is definitely given a different flavor. If you want to hear this original music, we were high schoolers playing it, so don't judge our playing, but it's on like Spotify and iTunes and everything. The group is called, it's kind of funny, I don't know the origins of this name, but it's called Madre Vaca, which translates to mother cow. Not sure why. It's stuck. Vaca, V-A-C-A, Madre Vaca. So you can find that on any streaming platform, and you can find this this arrangement of DeCoux planets. So here's Earth. Wish me luck.
Good luck.
And if I mess it up, it's okay. You've never heard it, right? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jarrett. Please remain seated and join me in reciting our Congregational Covenant which you will find printed in your order of service. We covenant to engage one another with honesty, kindness, and respect, to value diversity, seek understanding of our differences, and practice gracious accountability with care, love, and empathy. We make these promises to those who are here and those yet to come, so that we may be a safe, welcoming, and beloved community of acceptance, learning, and transformation. Please rise and body your spirit for our call to worship. The words are printed in your order of service. Our Director of Lifespan Religious Education, Jen Jones, will present the time for all ages today, after which the congregation will please remain seated and sing hymn number 413, Go Now in Peace, as our young people leave for their religious education classes.
Today's story is The Daffodil Principle by Geraldine Alspun Edwards. Several times my daughter had telephoned to say, "Mother, you must come see the daffodils before they are over." I wanted to go, but it was a 2-hour drive from Laguna to Lake Arrowhead. "I will come next Tuesday," I promised a little reluctantly on her third call. Next Tuesday dawned cold and rainy. Still, I had promised, so I drove there. When I finally walked to Carolyn's house, I was welcomed by joyful sounds of happy children. I delightedly hugging and greeted my grandchildren. "Forget the daffodils, Carolyn. The road is invisible in these clouds and fog, and there's nothing in the world except you and these children I want to see badly enough to drive another inch." My daughter smiled calmly and said, "We drive in this all the time, Mother." "Well, you won't get back on the road unless it's clear, and I'm heading for home," I assured her. "I was hoping you'd take me over to the garage to pick up my car," she said. "How far will we have to drive?" "Only a few blocks," Carolyn said. "But I'll drive. I'm used to this." After several minutes, I had to ask, "Where are we going?" "This isn't the way to the garage." "We're going to the garage the long way," Carolyn smiled, "by the way of the daffodils." "Carolyn," I sternly said, "please turn around." "It's all right, Mother," I promised. "You'll never forgive yourself if you miss this experience." After about 20 minutes, we turned onto a small gravel road, and I saw a small church. On the far side of the church, I saw a hand-lettered sign with an arrow that read, "Daffodil Garden." We got out of the car, each took a child's hand and followed Carolyn down the path. Then, as we turned the corner, I looked up and I gasped. Before me lay the most glorious sight. It looked as though someone had taken a great vat of gold and poured it all over the mountain peaks and its surrounding slopes. The flowers were planted in majestic, swirling patterns, great ribbons and swaths of deep orange, creamy yellow, salmon pink, and saffron and butter yellow. Each different colored variety was planted in large groups so that when it swirled and it flowed, it like its own river with its own unique hue. There are 5 acres of flowers. Who did this? I asked Carolyn. Just one woman. Carolyn answered. She lived on the property. That's her home. Carolyn pointed to a well A-framed house, small and modestly sitting in the midst of all that glory. We walked up to the house. On the patio, we saw a poster. Answers to the question I know you're asking, was the headline. The first answer was simple. It said 50,000 bulbs. The second one was one at a time by one woman. 2 hands, 2 feet, and 1 brain. The third answer began in 1958. For me, that was absolutely a life-changing experience. I thought of this woman who I'd never met before, who for more than 40 years had begun 1 bulb at a time to bring her vision of beauty and joy to an obscure mountaintop, planting 1 bulb at a time, year after year after year. This unknown woman had forever changed the world she had lived in. 1 day at a time, she had created something extraordinarily magnificent, of magnificence, beauty, and inspiration. The principle her daffodil garden taught us is one of the greatest principles of celebration. That is, learning to move towards our goals and desires 1 step at a time, often just 1 baby step. And learning to love doing things. Learning to use the accumulation of time. When we multiply these tiny pieces with all these small segments of daily effort, we too find we can accomplish magnificent things, and we can change the world. It makes me sad in a way, I admitted to Carolyn. What I might have accomplished if I had thought of a wonderful goal 35 to 40 years ago and had worked away at it 1 bulb at a time through all those years. Just think what I might have been able to achieve. My daughter summed up a message of the day in her usual direct way. Start tomorrow. She was right. It's so pointless to think of lost hours of yesterday. The way to make learning a lesson of celebration instead of a cause for regret is only to ask, how can I put this of use today? And with that, our story is told. I would like to invite Christopher to collect the chalice and lead the children back to religious education. I invite the congregation to remain seated and sing the children out with hymn 413, Go Now in Peace.
Now let's play jazz standard titled Peace by Horace Silver.
Thank you so much, Jarrett. We take up an offering in this church each week. This ritual is symbolic as well as practical. You can find convenient, modern electronic methods of giving in the order of service and on our website. We continue to pass the plate during our worship service as a method of living out our values and keeping our building and grounds a place that we all want to come to. This act of giving is as essential to our spiritual well-being as anything else we do. However you choose to give, please experience this ritual by taking the plate and passing it to your neighbor. Our offertory ushers, Donna Zimmerman and Jim Wood, will now come forward to assist with the offering. When the offering is complete, please rise in body or spirit to sing hymn number 123, Spirit of Life. Our speaker this morning is beloved BBUUC member Beth Curtis. Growing up in the Unitarian Universalist faith has allowed Beth a lifetime, thus far at least, to explore where spiritual meaning lies on a very personal level. The UU faith has also allowed and even encouraged that meaning to change and evolve. But time and again, Beth has found that the one true thing, the spiritual constant of her faith, is her relationship with nature and the interconnected web of life and existence. Beth, the pulpit is yours.
Journal entry. The bee tree. A single tree looms large in the estimation and memories of my childhood. This particular tree lived in the woods near the house where I grew up, and it had a hollow in which bees lived and thrived. We called it the bee tree, and it reigned over all of the other trees in the forest, partly because of its unique quality of housing bees and inundating the woods with the thick, sweet smell of honey, but also because of its location. The bee tree was located at a junction, a split in the main path of the woods. If you took a right, it would lead you to a wonderful south-facing wooded hill that I learned after countless walks with my parents was formed during the glacial period. Large boulders called glacial erratics left over from the Ice Age created wonderful perches for children pretending to be flying an aircraft or sailing on the bow of a ship or just watching the lazy sun call an end to the day. If you took a left at the bee tree, it brought you through a grove thick with ash trees that became our throne room every fall as the tree canopy became ablaze, lighting the golden carpet of leaves below. And the main path back to our woods led past a wetland area dotted with skunk cabbage and the sweet smell of damp leaves. This is where Mom would roll over those logs and find the much sought-after newt. Although usually all we would find are the brown little pill bugs that would roll themselves into balls as if trying to tell us no one was home. It had been 35 years since I visited the woods when I scattered some of my mom's ashes there. The ash tree grove was not to be found. Where had it gone? The glacial hill now had condos on it, but for the most part, the woods retained their magical quality with their open, rolling hills and pathways. And the bee tree, my bee tree, had long since died and fallen over. All but remnants of the stump remained, a mere whisper of its past glory. But at the base of the stump, someone had constructed a tiny wooden structure of sticks, like a teepee. And I was delighted to see within this tiny dwelling, a child had placed rudimentary fairy furniture inside, carrying on the tree's regal, magical stature, although now diminished into a new generation. Journal entry, inspired by nature. I asked my mom once if she believed in God, and she said, "Oh, yes, well, sort of." She did not believe in the man with the white hair and the pearly gates, but rather she believed in the common life force, that the common life force of all living things was somehow sacred. The way things are in nature are intertwined with one another, the inexplicable miracle of a flower, that was God for my mother. Dad was an atheist, or better yet, depending upon how you define religion, I'd call him a physicist. Pretty much anything that couldn't be proven in a theorem did not exist for him. But that didn't leave him without a sense of reverence or with awe and wonder. He believed that Mother Nature, which for him meant the natural force behind evolution, was a scientist and a brilliant one at that. The intricacies and the elegance created through the evolutionary process, although to him scientifically explicable, made them no less miracles. Both my mother and my father were in love with the natural world of the universe and beyond. They both revered Mother Nature, but in very different ways. Mom saw Mother Nature as deity, or the closest she could get to deity in her mind. Dad saw Mother Nature as science, but not the gray science of textbooks and classrooms, but the science of delight. Mom saw magic and Dad saw equations, but both found grace. And then the questions were repeated. How many types of mosses live on this rock? Do you think that's a toad or a frog? Who do you think lives in that hole? Nothing profound, nothing too advanced. My memories walking in the woods with Mom and Dad are some of the fondest I have. We'd stop and look, and the words were repeated. Elm, chestnut, Queen Anne's lace, Jack in the pulpit, mica, red-winged blackbird. And so I learned the words and I learned the questions. I learned the slow, methodical nature of observing nature. I learned the repeating the lexicon of identification as if it were my liturgy. I was acknowledging what was true and right. But it went beyond identification. It was connection both to nature and to one another. It was meditation and it was adoration. And although we attended the local UU congregation every week, this was our personal cathedral beneath the trees. In nature, my parents' faith and sense of wonder, their deferring but harmonious truths were passed on to their children. And what a wonderful gift to have received. Journal entry, the Vermont moon. I worked on a film in the fall of 1999 up in Vermont for about 4 months. The film was a community effort in many ways, and many of us were housed by the locals, some housing donated and some housing paid. I, the art director, along with the location director and the script supervisor, were warrened away in a nearby town down a long dirt road into a log cabin which was very much off the grid. The power for this home was solar generated with battery. Toasters and hair dryers were forbidden. On the nights of a cloudy day, the lights were perceptibly dimmer. We often left the house early in the morning and would almost always return after dark. But needless to say, we did not waste our precious electricity by leaving an outside light on all day. This led to a remarkable discovery on my part, a true night sky. The beauty and the depth of the Milky Way and the majesty of our moon. I've lived most of my life in areas where if I have the blinds open, I've never needed even a night light. Vermont, however, is vacuously, deliciously dark. But coming home at night, we would have to park a good 15 yards from the house and traverse up a grassy hill. Turning the car lights off on a night with no moon would leave us in utter darkness. We immediately bought flashlights and we would curse ourselves if we had left them in the house when we left in the morning. But 2 weeks later, we came to relish the return of the full moon. I had never experienced the true effect of the waxing and waning, the repetitive cycle of the moon in a truly dark sky. The glow of our moon is simply awe-inspiring. And you can see, of course we know the moon glows, but in a dark night sky, the light is almost palpable. It was the first time I experienced what was meant by a moon shadow. Moon shadow, I know. Until that point, in an overlit world, the profundity and the true beauty of the moon had escaped me. Journal entry, evolution. I just finished an amazing book called An Immense World by Ed Yong. Yong talks about the senses and the sensory worlds, both ours and those of animals, birds, fish, insects, etc. Some of these senses we share, but many we don't, and some are quite frankly just out of this world. The book got me thinking deeply about evolution and how and why things evolved the way they did. An interesting story came up in the book about the bee. 3 of the bee's 5 eyes can pick up ultraviolet wavelengths of light. Basically, the color ultraviolet, which our eyes cannot see. This trait comes in handy because flowers evolved to display an ultraviolet color bullseye to indicate where its pollen can be found, as you can see in the photo on the right. What fascinated me, though, is Yong's statement that there is scientific evidence that the bees developed their ability to see ultraviolet light well before the flowers evolved to display their ultraviolet pollen bullseye. Now it's fun to kind of wonder how the tail wags the dog in evolution. The complexities involved in the concept of evolution have invited skeptics from day one. Some people can't wrap their head around the fact that this is one of my ancestors. I talk a lot about ancestors up here. Kind of handsome, I think. We are most familiar with the 2 opposing camps of evolution, creationism versus a purely atheistic evolution. But I've discovered, if you dig a little deeper, there is a whole league of scientists, scholars, and philosophers who will tell you that things don't need to be quite so black and white. They contend that if God or some very clever entity had started the whole thing or has had a hand in it to a greater or lesser extent, that doesn't necessarily negate the science behind the theory of evolution. My problem, though, is that I can't really reconcile any of the ideas I've seen about evolution with my faith, either theistic or atheistic. It may exist, but I haven't found very much on evolution from an earth-centered religious standpoint. Now, first, hell yes, I believe in the science of evolution. But I believe that it's pretty pretentious to pretend that we know just everything about everything, especially when it comes to these bigger questions. My earth-centered beliefs are not truly deism or theism, but in searching, pantheism is the closest term I can find to what describes it. Pantheism, more or less, is the belief that the universe is God or the spirit, that all things within nature are holy, are divine. So for me, it doesn't make sense when we talk about a god, gods, or a creator intervening in the creation of nature when God is nature. As far as I figure, if it happens, it's an inside job. So in considering my spirituality in the discussion of evolution, move over Darwin, I offer my own evolutionary theory, informed evolution. If everything is interconnected, why wouldn't living things influence the way other living things live and evolve? In my faith, in my truth, it makes sense. Like all faith, I realize that this is nothing we'll ever be able to substantiate. It's all kind of a sneaking suspicion on my part. And I've had a lifetime in UU to explore sneaking suspicions. Some have panned out for me and some not. The important thing is that it is perfectly suitable to question one's faith, one's understanding of their place in the world based on a sneaking suspicion. My thinking wraps up actually quite tidily with the UU's 7 principles. In fact, exploring a sneaking suspicion is the poster child for our 4th principle, the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. But it's not my intention to talk too much about my beliefs here. I'd rather talk about 2 things: how I got here and why it's important. I understand how fortunate I was to have been brought up in and with access to the astonishing beauty of nature, and by parents who personified that we all have our personal perspectives and beliefs, and that we don't have to share certainties to have common reverence. As a child, I was honestly a questioning, atheistic UU kid. Growing up UU, I delved into different traditions and theologies, but the one constant throughout my whole life, whether through experiences like a night sky, or walks in the woods, or books like An Immense World, is my awe of the innate wisdom of nature. And over time, slowly, my deep reverence of the natural world developed into faith. Finding and tailoring faith in the UU tradition, to be honest, requires effort, intention, a lot of thought, and perhaps discussion and reading. Most times it's not going to be spelled out for us and will require the searching and the seeking. And continuing to do that will, yes, most likely change my faith, change my thinking yet again. And that's why it's important to me. Unitarian Universalism has allowed, even encouraged, my growth and change. And growth, whether spiritual or not, I think is an important part of being UU. For it is those times when I am thinking and learning and growing, and even when my faith is evolving, that I feel most connected and involved with the web of existence. The web of existence where I find both my solid footing and transcendence. In my mind, Earth Day should be a high holy day for all earthers. And I wish upon all of you the magnificence of the unbounded grace that our world has to offer.
Thank you so much, Beth. Please rise in body or spirit for our closing hymn, Blue Boat Home, number 1064 in the Teal hymnal. Please remain standing afterward for our closing words. We'll sing one verse of number 1064, Blue Boat Home. As Cindy Damon returns to extinguish our chalice, please hear these words of Eric Williams. Let us bless the earth and all that is steady and firm. Let us bless the sky and all that is open and filled with light. Let us bless their union, holy and without ceasing. Let us bless their children, the bounty of field and forest, stones, plants, animals, and all living things. May the gifts of earth and sky strengthen, refresh, nourish, and heal you and all the beings of the earth. Amen, and blessed be.